prohibits Congress from establishing a state religion, as we know, later was extended to the protections in the 14th Amendment, which say that all citizens of the United States deserve equal protection. We have not been given those equal protections. We are not asking for extra protection. We're asking for the same protections. We pay the same taxes. We pay the same Social Security, but we're treated differently.
Very, very brief, and then we'll go into the next question.
The man who drives down the freeway at 100 miles an hour is going to consume more gas than the one who's going 55. You're demanding equal protection. We need to have a government mandate that the gas consumption at 100 miles an hour is the same as at 55. It just doesn't work that way. You're engaged in a conduct that is completely different from marriage as historically understood in this country for centuries and in the Western world for thousands of years. And you want a quality of result. We're talking about a very different sort of conduct here.
We're talking about the conduct of loving somebody. That's the conduct we're talking about. What determines gayness is not what turns you on, but who you love. And we are talking about protecting the people we love, just as you want to protect your wife. And my being with my partner for 32 years has certainly not interfered with your being with yours for 21 or Joe's with his for 8. Nothing's happened. The sky hasn't fallen in Massachusetts. People are getting divorced less in Massachusetts, and they're getting married. We're not asking to get married. We are asking to be domestic partners and be protected under the law. That's what this is about. It has nothing to do with marriage. It definitely states it is not marriage. What it might lead to, that's another conversation I would be happy to have with you another time. But that's not what this referendum refers to. By approving Referendum 71, you are approving domestic partnership, not marriage. It specifically says domestic partnership is not marriage. So let's not muddy the waters.
Question number 5 for Ms. Womack and for Mr. Backholm. There you go. I'm horrible with last names today. Is it possible to agree that families that are gay or lesbian or single parents can in fact raise children in a stable environment? 2 minutes for each answer.
Yes, there is a lot of different types of family groups these days, and I believe what makes a stable environment is the love and nurturing and being there for your child at all times. Me and my partner have raised a son. He is very stable. He is totally heterosexual. I mean, I was there for him. I was even a parent-teacher helper. It's being there for your child and loving them and giving them a home and their rights to be able to think for themselves. And that's what he did. We didn't push anything on him. We let him grow in his own right way. And he's turned out to be a pretty good kid, you know. Just being there and loving and nurturing him. It's your child.
And your response?
I would say that there are, as she mentioned, a lot of different family structures, and children, for a variety of reasons, are raised in different environments. As far as establishing public policy and stating what a preference should be, I have no embarrassment and no shame in saying that I believe it is always preferable for a child to be raised by the man and woman that created that child. Now, I think that is an admirable goal, and social science has demonstrated that, if possible, that's always preferable. Now, we understand that that isn't always possible for a variety of reasons, and that doesn't mean that those parents don't love their children, and it doesn't mean they don't want the best for them. And it doesn't mean that we don't want to help them, whether they be single mothers, whether they be in homosexual relationships, whether they be, you know, whether the grandparents are helping raise the child. All sorts of life circumstances create other environments in which children are raised. And in fact, children do turn out to be functional in some of these. But in every case, the preference should be, whenever possible, that the child is raised by the man and woman that created it. And I think that our public policy, while recognizing that there's going to be deviations from that, should prefer that. And that is for the long-term best interest of our state and of our country and of our culture.
Unfortunately, the right to domestic partnership the way it is now, or marriage, the recognition of a union and the right to raise children, while not extended to loving parents like Alta and Eva, are extended to criminals, to child abusers, to spouse abusers. There is no distinction made. They can get married. They can have validated relationships, whatever you call it. What you are saying is that loving parents, if they are the same sex, do not merit the same value as a man and a woman who created the child, regardless of the way that man and women treat the child. And I'd like to point out that 40% of homeless people, homeless children, are young gay teens, often driven to selling drugs, often driven to prostitution, often driven to suicide, because their straight parents, the man and the woman, in this church-recognized union, threw them out on the street. They were driven out by these loving parents. I, on the other hand, had loving parents, and I was gay. Being straight, being a man and a woman, doesn't determine how your child turns out. It is the love and the affection and the support that two loving people, or a single loving person, or a grandmother.
Now, Mr. Struble, let me ask you this question with follow-up by Mr. Winters. Some have said that Referendum 71 is going to be used as a stepping stone where the state of Washington will then accept or be forced to accept same-sex marriage. How is that possible? Please limit time to 2 minutes.
How is it possible? You mean politically? We see it all the time. We've seen a whole history of usurpation of power by the bench. They amend the Constitution willy-nilly. They do so under cover of what they call a living, breathing Constitution, which is no more than rule by men instead of law. Republic, as defined by John Adams in his famous definition, is a republic of laws, not men. If you have the written Constitution as our prime authority in this country, then that isn't possible. But unfortunately, that's no longer the case. Usurpation of power is the order of the day, and therefore the courts can easily accomplish that. They've done it before. They have a long track record of that, and everyone who knows the Supreme Court in this state expects it to happen again in this case as a direct result of 5688.
Mr. Winters.
I'm a political scientist by training, and I'm a citizen of the United States. I learned about our system of government and what makes it work best. You know, it's not a pure democracy. We have three branches of government. We have a legislative branch, we have an executive branch, and we have a judicial branch. They all have their responsibilities with checks and balances, and the people ultimately have the last word. How do we have the last word? By whom we elect, by how we vote on referenda and other measures where direct democracy is permitted in the states. Not all states have those kinds of provisions, but nevertheless, that's how the American system works. So the courts are not against America. They review the laws. They often come up with decisions that may not be popular with a lot of the people. What happens? Well, in Hawaii, where the first marriage case came up in the 90s, the court was ready to say that equality in the Constitution of Hawaii required that couples of the same sex should have the right to marry in terms of legal marriage in Hawaii. What happened there? Well, people got the Constitution changed. They got that pesky notion of equality out of the way so that gay couples there could not be married. And they have a relationship there called reciprocal beneficiaries. So the American system works this way, not because, well, because we have checks and balances in the different branches of government, because they all have their distinct responsibilities and their distinct powers and limitations on their powers. So that's what has made America great, that's what has preserved our liberties, and that's what we should look forward to in the future.